Good morning. My name is Deborah Peoples, and I am sitting here today with the legendary Bishop Kenneth Spears, who is pastor of First St John Cathedral here in Fort Worth and in Watauga. And so today is a special edition because Bishop Spears also serves as chair of the Black Voter Impact Committee.
Amen.
And we want to talk to you about voting. Welcome, Bishop Spears.
Listen, thank you so very much for an opportunity to share. And what a great day it is. It's so nice outside today.
Yes, it is.
I love this weather.
Well, we've got an election coming up, and so I hope the weather stays good through that election. Yeah. So, Bishop, I know you do a lot of work, not only in your community here in North Texas, but all over Texas, the nation, and I know you've been to the Caribbean. And so, can you tell all of our listeners, we've got an election coming up in November. Why do you think this election is so important?
So one of the things I think is really important is that, when we began to talk about involvement in terms of the political process, particularly the presidential election, we really have to get people involved because things are just going haywire in terms of our nation. And I think that there's a great opportunity for people who serve and who are serviced. There's the difference between serve and then being serviced. Mm-hmm. And so I think both come in to play in this season. I think it's so important, particularly not just African Americans, but also for all cultures, all nationalities, to really get involved in this process. We really are in a bad time. We are experiencing, we've got COVID that's happening. We've got the racial, just this whole piece of misuse and abuse is amazing. It's crazy that it's happening. And so the best way to fight is not with fists, but with voting. And I think that every person who has been born into this world has an opportunity to participate in this upcoming election. There ought to be several things I think that motivate you to participate. I ought to go to the polls because I have a right to do so.
That's right.
I shouldn't stay at home, and I shouldn't think that whatever I do doesn't matter. I've got to make sure that what I do, who I am, matters, and I've got to exercise my right to vote. The second thing I think is important is that with participating in this election, we have an opportunity to see people who have been kind of at a low standard have an opportunity to move to a higher standard in terms of operation. I mean, equality is an amazing piece, but it's not equality if everybody's not enjoying it. And so I'm encouraging us, secondly, because we've got to do that. But then thirdly, I think it's powerful because this is a great opportunity for women who have traditionally not had a great opportunity. We're in a place now where culture is shifting. The world has changed in terms of view as it relates to our personal convictions. And so we got to do our level best to make sure that everybody has a chance, and particularly in this process. And fourthly, I would be, way off base if I didn't mention the fact that we're in a place where we have a personality who does not really seem to care about the entire world. That upper percentage and the percentile in terms of people who make money. I think that money is great, it's fabulous, you need it to live. But everybody needs a piece and an opportunity to survive, to live well, to have a comfortable lifestyle. There's a prayer I pray, particularly for my congregation, because I pastor the congregation. But that is, I want everybody to live well. I want them to wear well. I want them to eat well. I want them to be educated well. I want them to drive well, and I want them to have a fabulous life.
Oh,
and
I
you
love
can't
that.
have that if in life we are barred away from, we are hindered from productivity in terms of being progressive. And I think this election will open up that door of opportunity so that everybody has a chance to literally be a part. And so those are the reasons I believe that we need to participate in this upcoming election.
Oh, I love that. And so I want to go back to your first thing you talked about, that people say, my vote doesn't matter. So today you talk to them about why their vote is important. So we're finding that many young people are not registered to vote.
Right.
And I know that you have been a big proponent of registering to vote. And so October the 5th
Yes.
is the last date that someone can register to vote in the November 5th election. So what would you say to these young people who need to get registered?
So I'm really saying to them, you know, that you've got to do your very level best to get registered. That if you want to see change, and change can happen, you know, if you take your part, but you first have to start by registering to vote, but then secondly, participating in the the election process. I really believe that that if we get engaged in that, and that we give children and young people a purpose to get involved, and they have as much access and opportunity to be able to engage in that process is powerful. So I'm saying to them, man, register, but then go vote. You gotta, you know, registering is not enough. You really have to participate in that process. And then I want to encourage parents, because I think that particularly if it's your child's first time registering or their first time voting, go with them to the poll. Walk them through that process, and then give them life stories while you stand in the line. Give them some life stories of what it has taken in order for them to be able to participate. And so I think that, you know, as we're raising our children and telling them about the quote unquote American way, then we've got to also model for them our own role and our own participation. What I did, and personally with my sons, and I thank God for them, I helped them to make sure that the registration card was filled out. I did everything, and of course they're different ages, Kenneth and Kyle, but I made sure that myself or my wife went to the poll with them at different times. And we talked about what that process, while we stood in line, we talked about what had happened traditionally, what has been the struggle for African American men and women, and the choices that Browns and people with racial or lack in terms of financial, people who struggled because they didn't have access to some of the better things, what that fight was like and what it was really like. And so I began to say to those boys, young men, that if you're going to be a part of the journey, you're going to be a part of the fight, this is the best way to participate. And so I encourage not just the young people, but parents to walk through with that process. And if there are no parents, because the truth is, we've got guardians, we've got godparents who now have to step up to the plate. You know, we still have that. It takes a village.
Yes, it does.
You know, to help raise all of our kids. And so it's an important process.
Well, you brought up a beautiful memory when you talked about what you did with Kenneth and Kyle, because in the community that I grew up in, Odessa, Texas, we lived basically in a segregated area. And I can remember my granddad had to pay the poll tax.
Yeah.
We have his poll tax receipt. But young people don't often understand that we weren't automatically guaranteed the right to vote. This was something that people fought and struggled for.
Right.
But I love the idea of taking whole families to vote. I
Yes.
think there's something about
You know, that process, even from the role of a pastor, with youth ministries, young adults, there's a place, a time where the conversation has to shift, or even if it doesn't shift from church or Christianity or church life, you got to be able to weave that conversation together, because if I'm really going to be a Christian, then I got to participate in all of what life has to offer. I can't just operate behind the consecrated walls. I got to get in the world.
Yes.
And I got to participate in the world, and I got to be a part of the process and decisions that are being made, particularly in my life, and all of the decisions that have been made about my life is not from church,
Yes.
And so I've got to be a part of that process. And I really believe that my role as a pastor, or my role as a mentor, my role as a motivator is not just what I do in terms of my Sunday work, but I've got work through Monday through Saturday to make sure that I'm helping to make change in this society.
Well, and Bishop, it shows. And so, I wanted to ask you about how you got involved, but I'm going to ask you about, you had a group, the Black Voter Impact Committee.
Yes.
And so what are the kinds of things that your organization is doing to encourage people to get out to vote? Because people are going to hear this, and we're talking with Bishop Kenneth Spears of First St John Cathedral, and they're going to say, Bishop, I love the message, but how do I get involved?
So a part of that, we're setting up, particularly on our campus and on several campuses in terms of churches, colleges, high schools, voter registration opportunities. As a matter of fact, anything that we're doing community related, there's going to always be someone from BVIC that's a part of that process, with voter registration cards, talking to people, talking to crowds about the need to register to vote. In the weeks to come, as a matter of fact, weeks past and the weeks to come, we've got some designated churches where people are already prepared, and even with COVID, we're doing our level best to keep everybody safe. We're making sure that if you participate in this process, you've got to wear your gloves, you got to wear your mask. We take temperatures and we do all that whole process because we want to make sure that we do it right. We can't win the fight or the battle if we're losing people because of sickness or COVID. So if we can bring everybody with us,
then we want
then we want,
Okay, well, Bishop, one of the things, and I think for anybody who doesn't know, I come to you a lot for your counsel.
Yes.
And so one of the things that Tarrant County recently did about a year ago was we voted to have countywide vote centers. And so in the past, you had to vote in a particular place on election day. Well, we have changed that now, and there are going to be 50 early vote locations where you can vote anywhere, but on election day, you'll be able to vote at any of 141 locations around the county. So how do you think that helps people?
It really does help, Deborah. As a matter of fact, I was in a conversation with a group of pastors, and we were really unaware in terms of that you can, in terms of early voting and voting on the actual day, you could vote anywhere. As a matter of fact, I'm a part, but I missed that piece.
Okay.
And so I'm a part of the party, but I missed that piece. And so we left out saying, we've got to get a correction on that. We got that, and we began to say, what that does is it opens up, so that everybody can participate. There are absolutely no excuses, because a part of the problems that we face, particularly was we got to the place that we were assigned as a voting place. The lines were long and people were discouraged. So we're saying, if that line is long, man, there's another place. There's another space where you can actually vote and you can participate. So that opens the door for everyone to take a part. I think the other part of that process is important. You know, I think back to 2008 when we were voting for President Barack Obama in the location, and I wouldn't give out the space, but I got to give you the story. Right. I was at the place, the polling place, where I was scheduled, assigned to vote. They're voting, and I decided to just hang around. I wasn't working the poll. I wasn't poll watching. I was just, you know, there really being nosy because I wanted to know how that process worked. But here's what I discovered. What I discovered was there were boxes of ballots that were left in a corner that would have been left in the corner if I hadn't have said something.
Wow.
During 2008, I brought it to the attention. I'm not working. I'm not working at the polls. I'm not poll watching. I'm a concerned citizen who lives in a community. I've been assigned to a place to vote. And so I operated, and I just decided to wait around. As they were packing up ballots, placing them in vans or whatever their transportation they were going to use to take downtown or wherever they were going to go, they left four containers full of ballots.
Oh. That is frightening, but it also brings up another question because people are concerned in this election. We have a president who's been talking about, you know, election security and spreading rumors about vote by mail. And so people want to know, is my ballot safe? So I just want to tell you, we have new voting equipment now. We have a new county elections administrator. And so what the equipment does now is you will get your ballot. There is a locked machine counter that you put your ballot in before you leave. That is secure, that is very safe, and that is what they take downtown. But yes, in the past, there were issues that people worried about, but I think it is about as secure as you could possibly get. Many people worry about internet hacking. The box that you actually put your ballot in is not connected to the network. So there is no way that people can hack into that to change that. And so I feel like we have made great strides in trying to do election security, but what you brought up, if you had not been there, we would have had a whole travesty in justice. And so there are people who want to say, what can I do? I love what you said, that you just stayed around to help. They can come and help and be poll greeters and poll watchers to make sure that these things are going right. And then they can be election workers. We have an amazing person, Ms. Vera Roberts, who is working our election judges, and we have been trying to hire people who look like us to work in these polls so that when people come in, they don't feel disenfranchised and they're treated properly. So if there are people who are interested in being an election worker, if you will call 817-335-8683, we would love to have them on the team.
That's very good. You know, one of the things that I've been saying over the years, and it's been my piece that I've used to help motivate, that there is a way that you can make change and then make some change.
Yes. I love it, Bishop. I love it. Well,
because in this season,
yes,
we need some people, you know, particularly who need to make some change.
Yes.
You know, while we're making a change, and we really need to make a change.
Well, I love that. So you can make change while making change. If you want to be an election worker, it's $10 an hour. If you want to be an election judge, it's $12 an hour. But you also get paid mileage. So again, call 817-335-8683, and we can get you involved in the election process.
Amen. That's really good.
So, Bishop, this year, the governor, and so for today, we can early vote from October the 13th through the 30th. And the governor extended early voting by a week. So we now have almost 17 days that people can go and cast their ballot early. So what would you say to people who say, oh, I like to wait until election day?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I come across people all of the time who say, I love voting on the actual day. When they talk about the fight of civil rights and the fight of different injustices, it was for that day. And I'm saying my own language, but in this election, we need you to vote early.
Yes.
We need you to, as a matter of fact, to be honest, I personally am not pushing mail-in voting. I'm not pushing that. I'm saying because we need to make sure that vote is count. For whatever reason, mail has been late over these last few weeks. I don't want to take a chance. I want to make sure that we get in line, get there early, get the vote in, so that we can kind of get a gauge of where we are and what we need to do in order to make sure that we have a check in the win column.
Okay, but let's talk about early voting, because vote by mail, because I hear it from you, I hear it from so many people. This president has done a great job of creating fear, or what I call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Wow.
But so let me just tell you, on the 25th of this month, 43,000 ballots are going to go out to people who did want to vote by mail. And so what we're saying to people, if you want to vote by mail, don't wait. The minute you get your ballot, you should vote your ballot, go ahead and vote it, and mail it back in. For most people, I think except for Mansfield and some places in northwest Tarrant County, the cost to mail the ballot back is a first-class stamp. If you mail your ballot back immediately, you should not have a problem.
Good.
And so Bishop, I am one of those people that's I've got to vote by mail in this last election. I am going to track my ballot. I'm going to mail it back in, and then I'll follow it.
See, I think that's the piece that has to happen. You've got to track that.
Yes.
You got to be able to track that ballot.
Yes.
And it's good to know that we can do that. We can track the ballot.
Yes, we can call and see if they received it.
Right.
Because you sign the back of your ballot, and so they'll be able to tell you if they received it. But this is what I want people to understand.
That's good.
Many people we found in calling, a lot of times people get mail and do like we all do. We put it over here to look at later. Well, sometimes later, people don't get to the ballot till 2 weeks later.
Right.
The longer you hold on to that ballot and then try to mail it,
good.
You can run into problems.
That's good.
But I can tell you that 43,000 ballots are going out in September. People should have those ballots by the first part of October. Please don't hold that ballot.
Good.
Please immediately vote that ballot and mail it back. But if you don't want to mail it back, and some people said, Deborah, I don't feel good mailing it back, you can go up to the elections office in Fort Worth and turn that ballot in. You don't have to put it in the mail.
Right.
And so they're going to have a collection station so that people who don't feel good putting it in the mail, now you can't send your ballot. Bishop, I can't take your ballot, but you're too young to vote by mail. I know that. But so I can't have my sister take my ballot. I have to take my ballot myself and show identification. And so we're urging people, please, if you are voting by mail, mail that in early.
So let me just raise a question also.
Sir.
Even with college students, we've got, during the days when Kenneth and Kyle were in college, we tried to make sure, and we did make sure that they had, ballots where they were. Ken, of course, was way in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And we made sure that we were able to get that. And I think that the drive for our community is that if we've got college students that are away, then we need to do everything within our power to make
Absolutely.
sure that those children or young people participate in this election, though they are away in school.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And so one of the good things this time, and there's no good thing about COVID, but many of our students are still at home. A lot of them they're doing virtual school at home. A lot of the colleges and those that did open, some of them had to send students back
Right.
home. So I just want, in those cases, I'm asking parents and students who are at home, check your registration.
Excellent.
Make sure that, because some people actually registered where they're in school, and that makes a difference. So now they'll be voting by mail, because if their registration is in Houston and
Right.
they're back home because of COVID, they need to make sure
Right.
that they're voting in the appropriate place. But
And so the other area, and I'm glad we're having this time of sharing. I really appreciate you including me in this process. But the area that I have a lot of senior members, senior adults, and so we've got a lot of initiatives where we have pastors who put in their vans up and their buses, and with COVID, we're making all of the necessary arrangement to make sure that even if we're picking people up and we're bringing them to the polls, we're doing everything within our power to do whatever the drive up, what that process, how does help me out and say, if I'm talking to pastors, and I will talk to other pastors after the day, and we're saying senior adults who don't have transportation, if we pick them up and bring them to the poll, or at least to the curb because they can't get out, how does that process?
there is a process called curbside voting, and I'm so glad you brought this up, Bishop, because in the last election, I had a voter call me who said, I'm at a poll and they told me there's not curbside voting. That is absolutely incorrect. Every location has curbside voting. And so that is when they actually bring the voting machine to the voter,
Right.
and the voter is then allowed to vote from their vehicle, and they don't ever have to get out of the car. So
Good.
that is an option for seniors. So Bishop, many years ago, I had a voter who said, I have to go to the polls. And so I went to pick that voter up. I just had a friend who said, can I ride with you? And I said, absolutely. I was never so grateful in my life to have the friend, because this voter was wheelchair bound.
Wow.
So not only did we have to get the voter to the car and in the car, but we had to store the wheelchair in my trunk, take it up, and it was in Rolling Hills, take it up to the polling place, then get her out and in the wheelchair. And so she was a great candidate for curbside voting, but I didn't know, and she didn't know, but now that I know, I would never have gotten her out of the car. I would have insisted that they bring out the machine so that she could curbside vote.
That's good. I think that these are the areas, and as we approach this election, whatever the challenges are, sometimes you don't discover the challenge until, you get started. But, we've got to be prepared to make sure we do everything within our power so that every person has a chance to vote and participate. And so I need that knowledge as we share, because it's going to be important that we're familiar with the process, so that as we encourage and inform others, they know how to operate.
Well, Bishop, you are wonderful, and so I'm going to remind our voters and our listeners of some important dates. You can register to vote in this election through October the 5th, and then early voting is from October the 13th through October the 30th. You can vote at any of 50 locations around the county. Those are available. You can look it up now and see on the website where those locations are. And then on Election Day, you can vote anywhere. Thank you so much, Bishop. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And remember, if you have questions, call 817-335-8683, and we are there to help you and make the voting experience a great one.